Alrighty. So this is just I'm Valen. Um, I I decided I'd put together like a discussion with people, all different types of people from all different walks of life about mental health, specifically depression, and how it's affected them and what their thoughts are on it. Because it just seems to be it's either a blanket diagnosis nowadays or something's just making everyone feel really shit. I suffer from depression and PTSD. I only really feel my best when I'm talking to people about how I'm feeling. I know it's a pretty wanky sort of thing to say, but it does like it honestly does help. And I just thought, fuck it, I might as well see what happens if other people want to have a chat about it. So I have my first ever person I'm going to talk to. Probably not going to go any further than maybe a couple of people, but there's Ross the boss. He's my little brother. Um, Rossi, what?
Yes.
How does depression affect you? Firstly, I know that you're diagnosed.
It's
When did you get diagnosed with depression?
a couple months ago now it would be.
Hmm.
I'd say 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
Do you remember how you felt before you were diagnosed?
Um I felt like I had no reason to be like feeling slow and drowsy and just like sad all the time. Like there was just never any break, you know what I mean? It was just like constant 24/7. Why do I feel like this? I have no reason to feel like this. This is dumb.
What What made you think you had no reason?
I'm not sure what it was. I feel like oh, you've got no fucking doctor sitting there telling you're not depressed, that you're depressed. Sorry,
You think kind
you
of
know you
like you had no right? Is that
yeah
what you kind of felt like?
yeah I had no right. I had nothing to be upset about. So it was just like, well, why? Why am I like this? What's going on?
What did it make you feel like when you found out you were depressed?
It definitely made a lot more sense. That's for sure.
It
It
did.
was
So you would
yeah
say it probably made you feel a bit more relieved.
yeah it was. It was a relief in a strange way.
Yeah.
It was because I was like, oh, okay, that's why. So now I can actually just deal with what's going on, not just put it behind me saying, no, you're not sad, you're not upset, you're not none of it.
Yeah. Well, that
It
makes
was like
sense.
it was clarity. Yeah, it was clarity, more or less.
And what happened? Did they put you on meds or?
Yeah, they prescribed me with fluoxetine, I think it's called,
Yep. How'd
and
that
I'm on that.
how'd that make you feel when you first started taking them?
Oh, first couple of days it was a bit brutal. Not gonna lie, it
Mm.
changes you in a way, I suppose.
How how does it change you? Would you say?
It was I definitely had no energy, and I honestly had like a hard time like getting out of bed for a couple of days. Like it was
So,
pretty rough with that.
based on what you said at the start, that sounds like it just possibly made the depression worse, or at least feel worse.
Yeah, it did. It just everything was really slow.
Yeah.
Everything was so hard to do. I couldn't wrap my mind around doing anything. It was just too hard.
Yeah.
And
And
then after a couple of days, I wouldn't say a couple of days, more like a week or two, things started to pick up. I just randomly woke up one day and I had energy, and I was like, whoa, what's going on?
and how long
Then
do you
it
think
just
it had been since that day that you'd actually woken up and felt that way?
um, it's been, when was that? I'd say a good 4 months to that day I woke up and felt like that. And
So okay, so 4 months before that day, or you mean no?
oh,
What
like since
like
that
yeah,
day.
like how long before that day had you been feeling like you had no energy?
Oh, jeez. Um, a very long time. Very, very long time. I can't even put a time frame on that.
Do you still wake up feeling like you've got energy, or do you have some days where you feel like shit still?
There's, it's definitely, yeah. It's been a little while since I've had that wake up and feel like I can do stuff. It's just I'm not sure I feel like maybe my body's too used to it now or something. I'm not sure what's going on.
I so like
But yeah.
essentially like the dosage
Yeah,
has
yeah.
because yeah, I know what you mean. Um, I can't pinpoint when I think I first started falling into depression, but I can kind of see the time frame. What about you? Do you do you think that there's like a specific event that triggered it all, or do you think that maybe it was just something that kind of slowly beat you down over time?
It was. I reckon it was a mixture of a bit of both. Like there was a build up to stuff, and then it was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back type of thing.
What do you think did that?
Well, growing up, parents weren't the best at their jobs. There was a lot of shit with that, and I got moved around a lot. Never really got to stay in one place. And a couple of years back, I was with my dad, with him, and I moved out, and I was actually feeling pretty good then because I had my own thing going on. I didn't have to rely on shitty parents. It was just me doing my
Yeah.
thing, living with my mate, and when I was living there, everything was really good. But just I started thinking about I don't know, like my life, I guess, like
Yep.
the things I've missed out on, the things that could have been, all that type of thing.
Yep.
And then a couple of weeks later, my girlfriend at the time, we had a long relationship of I don't know, about a year. She slept with my best friend, and then after that it was just okay, yeah, fuck this, I'm done.
Yep. So do you think it was kind of more like it was sitting there beneath the surface and it was just waiting for something to happen, and then
Yeah,
the moment something happened, it all just came kind of crashing down?
yeah, yeah, definitely. That's definitely what it is. It was not fun.
Do you think maybe the reason? And I have prior knowledge to Ross's life. He's my brother. Full disclosure, he lives with me. I know exactly what's been happening. But I'm going to try my best to come from a very neutral point of view. Do you think that your parents may have been, well, were they diagnosed with any mental illness?
From what I know of, my father had I forgot what it's called.
Bipolar.
That's the one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And do you
But
think,
as for mum, I can't think of anything she was diagnosed with.
that they possibly did suffer from more than what they thought they did?
I think they might have. Yeah, I think there was a lot going on there that they just didn't want to think about. They just kind of pushed to the side, like a lot of people do, and they were just like, okay, it doesn't exist if I don't think about it.
Yep. Sorry about that. How do you think they pushed it to the side? What do you think? Did you think they coped with it at all, or
No,
how would you
no,
judge
no,
their
no.
coping mechanisms?
Their coping mechanisms were horrible. They were bad. Um, as you know, mum liked to drink. That was her fucking. That was her thing.
Yep.
Um, Dad was a bit of the same. Well, sorry, not a bit of the same. Very much the same.
Yep.
But he was also extremely like abusive and took a lot of his anger out on other people, where
Which
which is just not healthy. You shouldn't do that. It's just he didn't want to deal with it himself, so he just put others through, a bad time and that sort of thing.
do you think it was because they? Do you think that they knew how they were acting?
I think they did. I think they did know how they were acting, and they just refused to acknowledge it.
And if you could put yourself in their shoes, what do you think would have helped? What do you think they could have done to prevent it all from happening? And what do you think? What choices do you think they had to even find out that they were suffering?
They had many, many options. They could have.
Do you think there was anyone in their life that was telling them that something was wrong?
Oh no, I don't think there was. I think even if there was, and I didn't know about it, they didn't listen to him. That's for sure.
So you think they were very reluctant to take advice?
Exactly. They were.
They were more so, rather, by the sounds of it, they were the type of people that would rather push everything on other people and pretend like there's all these other problems rather than deal with their own problems.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Do you think that's a coping mechanism?
No, well, it is. It's just a very unhealthy one.
Do you, if you could change, like if you could go back and change it, what would you say to him?
I would. I don't know. There's a lot I would want to say to him. Like so much that could have just changed, or just anything. So much different stuff, but I think the biggest one would definitely be just put the bottle down.
Do you think that they would have been open to that though?
They would not have been open to it. No.
Now, when you're feeling your worst, do you feel open to other people's suggestions?
Actually, yeah. There was definitely a time where I didn't. There was when I wasn't in Israel with Dad, and my best friend's mum was telling me, like, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in your head right now, and I think you should see a therapist, and I just refused.
Yep. And
but
do you think that mindset could be the same thing that the parents?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I think that's what they were doing.
Would you say that what made you originally want to take other people's advice and possibly get help?
It was knowing someone that was going through the same thing, which was you. It was like knowing that like someone else I knew was going through something bad and they were dealing with it, and they said, this is what you have to do, this is the best thing to do, because they had prior knowledge.
When you found out that I was suffering from depression and you found out you had depression, how did it make you feel knowing that someone else was also suffering?
I know it's sad. Like it really does suck that knowing that another person has to go through the same thing. But
you can't control that.
Exactly. But at the same time, it's comforting knowing that someone knows how you feel.
Yep. So you think that it made you feel a bit more normal?
Yeah, in a way, like, because you can share. You know what I mean? You can talk without judgment. There's just
do you think
mutual respect in a way?
Do you think there was a lot of people that you know of that would have judged you?
Yes, I think there was.
And
definitely a lot of people.
What do you think gives them that power to be allowed to judge you?
I'm not sure. I think that's more of a personal thing on my end. They would have no right to judge me, but I just would have been very insecure about talking to them.
Do you think they even deserve you to have to explain that to them? Do you think depression is something that you have to announce to new people in your life, or current people?
I don't want to, but yep. I know there is definitely, if you really do get to know someone, that if they just don't know that you can go through these phases of just, I don't want to get out of bed, I just want to sit here and cry. Like,
do you think it's not fair on them if they don't understand that?
Yeah, and they just, I don't know, pull up one day expecting having a nice fun day, and you're just in your bed crying.
Do you think maybe also it takes a bit of pressure off you having to act normal?
Yeah, definitely. If they know, if you give them, the heads up, like, I'm in a good mood right now, but I definitely will go through a phase that I'm not so much in a good mood.
Would you say that yourself or people that you know of have used that to their advantage? The fact that people will tend to give people with depression a bit of leeway. Do you think you know people that, or yourself, have maybe once or twice used that and been like, no, I'm actually depressed today, but really you just didn't have any motivation?
No, I've definitely known some people that have done that. Like a person I know's ex-partner, for sure, that was a very, very big user of that. I know I've definitely done it. There
Do you
was,
do you think it not cheapens, but do you think when these people, realize it's a lot more frequent? Because I know that, and you'll know as well that there it's not triggers, but you can tell when someone's having a down day. Do you
yeah,
think that when someone does use it as an excuse rather than being truthful, do you think that it and cheapens essentially the suffering that you have on those days where you actually do feel like shit, and people
yeah,
feel less inclined to believe you?
yeah. I feel like it, it's a bit like the boy who cried wolf. I
Yeah,
guess it's yeah.
I um,
You
I
do. You're kind of like, oh, I'm just not feeling it today. Am I depressed today?
yeah. Well, that's see, I've also had days like that where maybe for like 10% of the day I felt like pure shit, and I thought, oh, it's my depression. It's my depression that's flaring up. Oh, and I'm gonna write the whole day off, and then fucking 10 minutes later, after I've written the entire day off and I've called into work, I've realized, oh no, you're actually feeling like shit because you didn't look after yourself properly last night, or
Yeah.
you ate the wrong food. Do you think it's really hard, or do you think there's any way to really, during that 10% of the day, to work out what it is that's actually going on with yourself?
Well, for me, it is pretty hard because I just get stuck in the mind frame like, oh, I'm upset. I'm upset. Don't want to not be upset. I'm upset. I
Yeah.
don't want to do anything about it.
Or do you think that maybe that upset is actually just your depression, and you have been realistic with it, and you
Yeah,
just
I think it is. I think when it does act up, like you said, like 10% of the day, be a couple of hours that you're just like, wow, I've had enough. I don't want to do anything.
you know, do you think
But
it's
then
fair on
normally,
ourselves to write the whole day off?
um, it honestly, it really depends for me. Like, it depends on how severe you're feeling. Like, if it's like really, really bad, I feel like maybe it is a good idea to just, okay, don't risk anything. Just chill out. Don't don't associate with people. Just feel your feelings, work through it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like,
Do you
if it's
think?
not terrible,
Yeah.
and you write the day off straight away in the morning, and then 10 seconds later you're like, oh, like I've had my upset moment. I'm not really that upset right now.
Would you
Maybe you should
say?
just go do what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say that writing the day off actually probably pushes you more into that depressive state?
Yes, I do believe that. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It's because you're not trying to work through it or really like acknowledge what's going on. You're just like, yeah, okay, I'm done for
So,
today. That's it.
in my situation, in my workplace, I there are people that depend on me, and when I write a day off, their day becomes worse or harder because I'm
Yeah.
not there. Do you think, or would you say there's a threshold for where you can write it off because ultimately you are going to affect other people's days?
Yeah. I feel like there has to be some sort of like, you have to have a go. You know what I mean? Like, if you are in a situation where you are going to affect other people.
So, how I normally weigh it up is I go, all right, am I in a productive state? And if I'm not, and I know that I'm just trash, and that day's just fucked, and I'm not going to be any help to anyone else. Generally, that's it. I won't even waste their time. But do you think that mentality could possibly just be the depression talking, or do you think that we, as people who are depressed, we have the ability to see from the outside in, or do you reckon we just get caught up in the depression?
I know a lot for me anyway, I definitely get caught up in it. Like I don't look outside of it. I kind of just like, oh, I'm so sad right now, and I don't want to,
Kind of like tunnel
see
vision.
exactly tunnel vision. Yeah, you don't want to see what's going on outside of your own head.
Do you remember a time when you didn't feel this way?
Um,
Or more specifically, do you remember that feeling of not being what you would say was not being depressed?
yeah, it was during the time I was in Innisfail without
Yeah.
without my father.
So you can.
Yeah, it was just I don't know. I didn't really stress. I didn't
Was it
think about a lot of stuff. It was
was it a special feeling? Because I know that I keep trying to. And why I was diagnosed with depression, but my psychiatrist said that it was most likely something that's been ongoing for a long time. So it's very hard for me to remember a time when I didn't feel like this. But from what I can remember, I think what I've done is I've put that me on a pedestal and thought that that time was so much like I was feeling so much better than I was now, when in actuality, it was just how I was dealing with that time.
Yep.
And it, because, you don't just magically turn up depressed for no fucking reason.
Yeah.
There's always a
not
tiny.
just like
It can be a tiny reason. It can be a massive reason. But there is something that normally will cause you to start having that chemical imbalance, or at least get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
When I think of the time before, me feeling like shit all the time, I kind of still felt like shit. I think I just dealt with feeling like shit better.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe the same, or do you actually remember feeling like a lot better?
No, it was kind of the same as that. Like there was just I was so busy and I had so many people to talk to, and there was so much going on that I never really thought about it.
Yep. So you think that because you were being not necessarily productive, but because you were constantly, your mind was in other places.
Yeah.
You weren't really focusing on your current state.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You weren't focusing on your own mental health.
So
you were just
yeah.
thinking about, oh God, I have to do this.
My question is then, would you say either A, that, and I know this is going to sound really cheesy, but even if you're someone who isn't affected by depression in any way, shape, or form, whether it be a partner or a friend or a family member, but do you think either A, even the mentally healthy people should check themselves constantly to make sure that they are in a healthy state? Or B, do you think that it's keep yourself busy, and that would, which one do you think would be a better method of not preventing but at least helping? Do you think A, check yourself before you wreck yourself all the time, even when you think you're happy, check just to make sure, or B, keep yourself busy, because if you're keeping yourself busy, then you aren't thinking about bullshit?
I do like the sound of A,
Yeah.
and B sounds kind of unhealthy because that's what I was doing.
Do you think?
Yeah, I'd
Do you
probably
think?
go.
Do you think that people who aren't suffering, so this is people that aren't suffering and have no one in their life suffering, all right? Because generally, once they have someone in their life suffering, they kind of get the gist of how important it is. Do you think that people who just are completely vanilla, haven't got any mental health issues going on, which is fucking rare, but you know what I mean? Do you think that they would be open to that fact of checking themselves, or do you think that it's
No.
by telling them that they need to check themselves that starts to cast doubt?
I don't think they would be open to checking themselves at all, and it would cast out definitely. So it's like there's not really much. Maybe there's not much you can do there because they're probably so happy and doing their own thing and just not thinking about it because they don't have anyone else in their life or themselves that are being affected by it. So they just forget that it exists.
Yep. So a lot of people say that preventing, well, not preventing, but dealing with depression and you know, breeding a healthy environment where depression isn't rampant is by, you know, keeping positive attitudes and whatnot. But I honestly think that the moment you start questioning someone's psyche, they start questioning their psyche. um, and
Yeah, it's a touchy subject.
I don't think there is anyone that isn't affected by mental health, because when you think about it, you know, mental health can be good mental health, can be bad mental health. But I think if there's someone on this planet that hasn't had a down day, they're a fucking robot. Because there's no
Yeah,
way in hell. There's no way in hell. I think everyone's been affected by either a depressive mood or depression at least once in their lives, at least 100 times in their lives. The difference is there's some of us who can bounce, and I think everyone bounces. We all bounce, um, but we have a limited amount of bounces. So you cop shit, you bounce. Your parents are cunts one day, you bounce. Your best mate dies, it hurts, but you bounce. But eventually the bounces disappear.
yeah,
And I think some other people have just had not to bounce as much as others. Um, Ultimately, depression is kind of a way, in my opinion, of your brain going, "Hey, hold up, mate. We've gone through all this shit. I got no bounces left. Um, I'm going into recovery mode, and the only way I can see that is you ain't gonna feel happy anymore, because the moment you feel happy, something happens and you bounce, and then I feel like shit. So if I give you a, you know, if we just feel shit all the time, then I'm not gonna drop and feel even fucking worse." Which leads me to my next
mm,
question. When you are having a down day, is it your lowest, or do you reckon it's like just a low state you get in?
I think it's like a low state because lowest I think would happen after like an event or something bad happening to you
Yep.
and you're dealing with it. And then, but even then, that bounce, you would just bounce back to still being sad, but just not as sad.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's not really fun to deal with in it anyway. But
No.
like that's what I think. Like you said, the limited amount of bounces. I think that we still bounce, but just like not as high.
Yeah. So you still think?
Or
Do you think when people start thinking about suicide, it's because, and not to trivialize suicide, but suicide and depression go hand in hand, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah,
And not to, you know, make it cheapen or anything, but do you think suicide's when you've just stopped bouncing?
yeah. I think that's when you've hit a point where you just I can't deal with anything anymore. Like your brain's just like that's enough.
I actually agree. I think it's a point where your body's kind of, you've stopped seeing anything else.
Yeah,
Can't see anything else. You just see
yeah.
that tunnel vision just becomes everything. Just becomes a
It's like
tunnel
a
perspective point of view. It's not even tunnel vision anymore. It's just everything's in the tunnel, and the only thing that can get you out is stopping it.
it's it's like a what's the word, like a last resort type thing. It's all you can think about. Like
Yeah. Do
it'll
you
just it'll stop.
do you think it's depression ultimately, if untreated, leads towards suicide, or do you think suicide? All right, actually, what I mean by this is suicide's become super fucking common in the last couple of years. But so has media talking about suicide and TV shows with suicide in it now. I'm not going conspiracy theorists on this. That's for another conversation. But do you think suicide breeds more suicide?
In a strange way. I think you're right. It's
Because from
maybe
what
because I feel like for some people that wouldn't even like that thought wouldn't even come into their head. They wouldn't even think like, oh, suicide doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like it's just
yeah,
if someone was never affected by someone thinking about it or
yeah,
actually doing it
then
or
why would
doing
they think about it?
exactly, then they would have no reason to
Yeah,
think about it.
there's always.
Or
I think there's always something that I think people focus on that side of depression way too much. They don't focus on, the fact that things get better. And obviously, those who are depressed, it's you know, you can tell them things are going to get better, but you're trying to teach
Yeah.
you're trying to teach that ball how to bounce again. It's kind of hard.
Yeah, it's
But
not gonna just work like that.
I think it's more on the outside too. Like people, when they hear that you're depressed, how have non-depressed people treated you? Do you think since you've told them that you were depressed?
There is a stark change. There really is.
Yeah.
It's I honestly hated it at first. Like I really did, but it's just gotten to a point where it's common now, and it's
Do you
if
think
someone knows you're depressed, they treat you differently, and it's
what would you? How do you say it's different from how they used to treat you?
I feel like they tread carefully in a way, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
they say things that they normally would. They don't say things that they normally would say. Sorry, and they don't like they act the same, but just censored in a way.
How does that make you feel?
Not good. It's it feels like a what's the word? Like it makes you feel like an outsider. You know what I mean? Like everyone looks at you differently. It's yeah.
Would you say there's been any benefits of anyone treating you like that? Like, do you think that, like, a throwback to the other question before, how I asked, have you ever used your depression?
Yeah.
Do you think that people treating you differently, that it's kind of how we get away with those days where we write the draft? Do you think that's how?
I think that is what it is because people think this way and they're not.
Do you think them putting us on a pedestal per se regarding our depression? Do you think it's because right? What do you think is more realistic? Either A, it's because it makes them feel uncomfortable and they just want to get us dealt with, or do you think it's just they don't know how to deal with us and they've always, or do you think it's more probable that they've just been taught that depressed people just need to be given fuzzy little cuddles and everything's okay? Or do you think that it's their way of trying to not be uncomfortable with us? What do you think is more realistic?
I think it's just someone not knowing how to react or how to deal with it or anything. They're just like, okay, well, give them what they want. Don't think about it. Just do it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like they don't.
And what do you think breeds that mentality in people who aren't depressed? What do you think? Do you think it's the current knowledge that's out there of, people are depressed, you've got to, give them a little extra couple of minutes, do you think that's what's done it?
I think it has, yeah. Whereas,
would you?
I don't know about you, but I would definitely just like that to not be a thing. I would like to be told, buck the fuck up and do it.
Personally, I prefer when people are real with me. I in the workplace have been doted on, and while at the start I really felt like it was healthy, eventually I realized that it's definitely wasn't working for me. It might work for other people, but I need to be surrounded by people that will be real with me. And I think that's because my depression comes from, not comes from, but is definitely affected. Not affected. It grew from people who lied.
Yeah.
So
it feels unnatural when they speak to you in a way or treat you in a way that isn't normal.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking dead on. All right, man. Well, I'll ask you one last question.
All right.
Because I thought this was only going to take a couple of minutes. I didn't know how long it was going to take. I just wanted to have a chat. All right, so this doesn't have to be specifically you. It could be anyone in your life that's been affected with depression, or it's with someone that's got depression or PTSD or bipolar, anything. But what do you think is the worst situation you've seen come from mental health? So, like the worst thing someone's done, and how do you think that could be attributed to their mental health? So, essentially, what did they do, and why was it that their mental health was at fault and not them?
It's the worst thing I can think about, like what comes to mind is someone I know attempting suicide. It's and I think, and because it was something in the past that they found out, you know what I mean? It wasn't something that happened just then. It was like something in the past happened to them, and it only was brought to light then.
Yep. So you think that because it wasn't a decision that they'd made,
Yeah,
rather
it
it was a decision that was made at them or towards them, that it it wasn't them. It was purely a reaction
It
from
was-
the mental state.
yeah, it was just a reaction of, oh my god, get me out. You know what I mean? Like, I can't deal with this. This is too much.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Alrighty, buddy. Well, thank you.
It's all good. That's what I'm here
Um,
for. Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, yeah. Awesome, my dude. Well, I'm gonna drink this Red Bull you bought me. Yeah. If anyone ever feels like having a chat about it and wouldn't mind doing this, I'm thinking about doing it. Hopefully gonna try and do it as a semi-regular thing. I personally have a lot of family, as you know, Ross, and friends who are affected by mine and their own mental health. So there'll probably be a couple more of these. And if you feel like maybe having a chat with me, leave a comment and we'll work it out. Alrighty, Rossi. Well, thank you for that, buddy.
All good, man.
All right. Cheers, dude.
Anytime.